Welcome, everyone. You're in for a treat this afternoon, morning, middle of the night, wherever you are. I'm not sure what time zone you're in, but you're very lucky to be here right now for this roundtable. Let me do a brief introduction of me and a little bit about the conference, and then I'm going to introduce your speakers and we'll get going because I don't want to hold up their time. I'm excited to hear from each of them. So welcome to our session. It's titled Beating Parole Boards with Mutual Aid. My name is Sandra Joy, Sandy Joy. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of the event organizing team and the moderator for this session. I want to make you aware that closed captioning is available. To view a live transcription, click the live transcript button on the bottom menu and select show subtitle. Also, in order to secure the space, you cannot rename yourself once you have entered. We are sorry if you were unable to add your pronouns to your name already, but we urge you to do so before you log into the next session. In dreaming of this event, our team was inspired by the words adapted from Project NIA. Abolitionist futures are not compatible with white supremacy, settler colonialism, misogyny, heterosexism, transphobia, ableism, and classism. Yet these systems of oppression are all around us and affect even this event space. The hope our team has for this session is that organizers, presenters, and participants, particularly those of us who carry a lot of privilege, are mindful of the differential impacts of power and have the courage to hold to account anyone here who exercises power in ways that enact harm. If one of our organizers removes you from this session, our intention is not to punish nor to exclude you, but to practice care for the abolitionist community we are building. I want to note that participants at this wonderful roundtable, we encourage you to post reflections about the conference, about the session, the conference overall, to #ImaginingAbolition2021. So I'd like to move by introducing our wonderful presenters, and then I'll turn it over to them. Okay, so first we have Eshe Kiama Zuri. They are a 24-year-old uneducated Black non-binary disabled grassroots activists. They are the founder of UK Mutual Aid, an intersectional financial and non-financial support network for marginalized people, Knots Activist Wellness, and Vegans of Color UK. They are also a doula, a vegan chef at Umoja Foods, and currently the vice chair of the Vegan Society. As she is the creator of the term full spectrum community care, a concept that not just speaks on, but actively shows the importance for building communities from the bottom up and tearing down and replacing saviorism and oppressive activism structures with practical, supportive, sustainable alternatives that prioritize marginalized communities. Next, we also have Kelsey M. Kelsey is a feminist campaigner based in London, organizing in campaigns against state violence and working to explore and build alternative support, specifically addressing violence experienced by women of color and other marginalized groups. As a freelance facilitator with grassroots collectives Cradle and Resist and Renew, she delivers trainings on bystander intervention, power and tools for campaigning and movement building. Last and certainly not least, we have Kushal Sood. And Kushal is a solicitor advocate from Nottingham specializing in prisoner rights. A particular interest in structural and institutional racism, algorithms, and the role, if any, of litigation in addressing them all. Kushal was called to the bar in 2006 and has been in practice ever since, both in Nottingham and London. Was secretary of the Association of Prison Lawyers from 2012 to 2015, and continues to study and reflect on how best to participate in the abolition movement, both within his practice and in spite of it. So we have altogether 60 minutes. So we'll be ending just under 60 minutes, and I will turn it over to our speakers now, and they will introduce Nic to you, I believe. Nic, I'm sorry, I didn't have a bio for them, but they will introduce Nic. My apologies, Nic. And they will also give direction as to how they wish the participants to proceed when it comes to interaction or Q&A period. Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to your presentation. Let me turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. Yes, thank you so much everyone for being here. Me and Nic are here as part of a sort of blossoming new project called the Parole Support Network. And we're really excited to be part of this discussion tonight. To excuse us in the UK, like it's 9 p.m. over here, so it's the end of Saturday after a very long week for all of us. Whereas it's around lunchtime for some of the people watching potentially, so slightly different energy potentially being brought into the space. But so bear with us if we're a bit tired. But really excited to be here to talk about this work, to speak about the Parole Support Network, this potential of combining with, or like the work that we have done already, and the future potential of working closely with mutual aid networks and building that infrastructure to see really effective decarceration work in the UK. Really excited to chat about that. This is going to be like quite a loose, casual roundtable discussion. So I'm going to let everyone kind of introduce their work and what they've been up to, how they're feeling, we'll chat a bit, and then I definitely want to hear from all the amazing people in the audience, to hear your questions, your comments, your thoughts, the work that you're involved in. So we will be interacting with the chat, and if people do want to ask questions, you can put your hand up, and we can open that up as well. What else did I want to cover at the beginning? We have about an hour, so I'm sure we will have lots to chat about, and then we'll get to your questions probably for the last half hour, 20 minutes or so. Who wants to? I'm going to hand over maybe to Eshe first to chat and introduce yourself a little bit about UK Mutual Aid and the incredible work that you do in supporting our communities.
Oh, it's always so awkward being the first one to have to explain what we do. So hi, I'm Eshe Kiama Zuri. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the founder of UK Mutual Aid. UK Mutual Aid is a community support network that we set up back in 2018. It's Black run, it's activist forward, and it's about providing support and a community space for marginalised people across the UK. So we've got people in all different cities. I'm based in Nottingham, same as Kush. So, we have local bases in different cities as well. But a lot of what we do at the moment is online support. Obviously, with the pandemic, a lot of it has been online pandemic support. But our intention is to try and build sustainable support networks where people are not just taking, where people are giving back through the true meaning of mutual aid. We wanted to be able to facilitate rather than run a network. And so we're hoping that 2,000 members in, that's what we've created. We focus a lot on financial support, which a lot of other mutual aid groups don't necessarily focus on so much. But we think that taking the financial aspect out of the support that people need is classist and is, always going to create a imbalance of power between people who have less access to financial resources versus people with a lot of access to financial resources. And as much as an anti-capitalist as I am and the group is, we understand that we all need money to survive in this society right now. So financial support is a big thing that we focus on. At the moment, we are in our reparations month, which we have quite often. During reparations month, we have educational resources and conversations about the importance of personal reparations, as we call it, alongside the fight for state reparations. We believe that personal reparations are an essential part of anti-racism work, and it helps us to be able to be accountable to the privilege dynamics that white people and non-Black people of colour have over Black people in our current society, especially in the UK. So it's a very interactive month where you know, Black people post their PayPal links and requests and stuff, and we ask that everybody else who is non-Black in the group participates accordingly and offers support, whether it's financial or non-financial. And we try to build this relationship between people within our community, understanding that we're all coming from different backgrounds, and so we give what we can. We've done some work with the Parole Support Network, and a lot of our focus is on what practical support people need within the UK and how as a community we can build structures to provide that. And so I'm kind of losing my train of thought on sec. And so we've done some work with helping support with parole cases, but a lot of our work is done within communities once people are released from prison, or supporting people within the prison system at the moment. We also work with people within detention, immigration detention as well. So we hope to not just, or I hope not to just talk in this session, but also to learn from this session, to learn from my fellow speakers and the audience, and to take as much of this as I can back to UK Mutual Aid, so that we can participate in making the UK a truly abolitionist state. So yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eshe. Nic, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the Parole Support Network. What is it? What are we doing? What's going on?
Thanks, Kelsey. And yeah, thanks for having me here. I don't really like public speaking. Anyway, have a go. Yeah, so the Parole Support Network kind of was created by accident to some extent, where it transpired that writing letters of support for friends who were coming up to their parole hearings was really helpful. Sorry, this probably isn't news to other people, but it was a process of realization for me. It's been helpful in enabling them to get released from prison and to be successful in that parole. So yeah, so kind of then there was an event there. I had the pleasure of meeting Kush. We sat next to each other at a table, and from there we kind of thought, actually, can we make this a little bit more intentional? Can we actually plan to put together something that connects mutual aid groups and mutual aid networks with people who are coming up for parole, so that we can ensure that not only are they released, but that people are able to stay and become connected in communities? Because we're not just looking to get people out of prison, but we're looking to make sure that people stay out of prison. Yeah, it might be worth mentioning that this is kind of, at least my entrance to this has been through work around IPP sentences, imprisonment for public protection, which, for those of you who don't know, is an indefinite sentence that still thousands of people are suffering in England and Wales. And as far as I understand, but maybe Kush can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the people who are currently incarcerated under this sentence is because they've been recalled back to prison after initially being released. So what we really want to do is to work to make sure that those recalls, they're not able to do those recalls because they have to deal with us if they try. And this is where it's been amazing and brilliant to work with Eshe and UK Mutual Aid, because they'll come through. We'll say there's somebody who's hoping to get released to this area. Can you do a call out? And then they'll come through with some people who we know will be solid and will help people, for example, to make phone calls for the job centre, access local services, be somebody to talk to, because as maybe many of you know or can imagine, coming out of prison is obviously a really difficult thing, especially in the current conditions. So yeah, so in practice, the Parole Support Network is basically trying to toe the really fine line between being friends with people and trying to address the awful service NGO provider dynamic that is so prevalent in the UK and I'm sure elsewhere as well. but also being able to present as professional enough for the parole board that they take us seriously. And it's a line that I think we still have a lot of work to develop. It's very much in the early stages. But yeah, that's kind of yeah, where it's at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think after Kush, tell us a little bit about the parole board side and yeah, give us a little bit more context there. I think, yeah, it'd be great for us to maybe have a discussion about, like, yeah, what does that support look like? And what are the kinds of things that we mean? Like, how do we, what is it that feeds into people getting recalled, and what are the things that we can do to stop that happening, right? And talk a bit more about what that looks like. But yeah, Kush, how are you?
Thanks, Kelsey. I'm all right, not too bad. I was trying to remember, actually, just before we started, what the genesis of this whole, if we can call it a project, it was, because, and I think just for everyone sort of tuning in, we've been very careful, I think, to try and avoid labels, because so much within the criminal justice system is a huge contrivance, and what the Parole Support Network and the people that have joined it so readily have striven to try and avoid is becoming part of that contrivance. So really, you know, I couldn't quite remember where it all kicks off, and then Nic's kindly reminded me that it was at this event that I think we both spoke at, but it's grown very organically, and that's, I think, one of its strengths. And you know, for my own role within the whole setup is very much an independent one. You know, I'm a lawyer who represents people on their parole hearings, as we heard in the intro, and been doing it for 15 years. And I've tried, and you know, through system of trial and error, to work with various charities and third sector organisations, and we're in, to be sort of specific about it, we're in England and Wales. So the reason that you say England and Wales rather than the UK is that England and Wales has its own parole system, and so we are, you know, beholden to the way the authorities work there. So I wouldn't want to sort of tarnish Scotland with the same brush that I tarnish us with, for instance, because they have a different system of kind of support from social workers, among others. But you know, what we were, I think, I was finding in dealing with charities and third sector organisations was that they never put their money where their mouth is, to be frank. And there was a certain kind of person that they would want to support, to have on their books as being supporting. So anybody who was having particular difficulty with authorities and was being particularly targeted by authorities wouldn't fit the bill. And just to underline that fact, most charities and third sector organisations require referral from probation directly. So when probation are your conduit for being eligible for, you know, just support of whatever nature, then you're stuck, especially if you're black, and you're stuck, especially if you're from a marginalised background, because probation's own systems of assessing these people are inherently, you know, racist and biased in other ways. So that's when, you know, I think that the light bulb moment came for those people involved in the Parole Support Network, when we realised that kind of stuff wasn't working, and we found a way of trying to introduce the idea of support into a parole hearing, and also trying to reinvent who the public are. Because the parole board and the probation service at parole hearings, they have a monopoly really on describing the public, and they sort of try and create this mythical figure of the public, or this mythical sort of idea of the public as being people sort of hiding behind bushes at the prospect of people being let out of jail. But I think the stronger these networks can become, the more we can demonstrate that that idea is idiotic. But again, you know, I'm speaking from the perspective of a lawyer trying to present a case to a carceral authority, to a judicial body that specializes in the law. I was listening to Jalil, who spoke just before us, and he was talking about, you know, the strange status of the law. And one of the questioners in his talk called law the nonsense of law. And in many senses, I can sort of I can sympathize with that characterization of the law, because, you know, here I am facing these carceral bodies. We're sort of trying to appeal to them in a way, but that's how you're taught at law school, to try and win cases, to try and appeal to the judge you're appearing in front of. And more recently, certainly as I've been more involved with the Parole Support Network, I think I've been a lot more confident, I'd say, in saying, well, actually, I'm not going to try and appeal to an individual. I'm going to try and put a particular case forward, which involves laying out the kind of support that will be available to someone on release. So rather than beating parole boards, as this kind of panel discussion is called, I think it could have just as easily be called, you know, surviving probation, because they're the other kind of, you know, actors in this whole process that have, particularly in the UK and I beg your pardon, England and Wales, they have a scandalous record of recalls. The figures, it's a figure that I probably cite daily, are over the past 25 or so years, they have increased their rate of recalls by 5,000%. And you know, the state violence from the probation service in this country is, I think, you know, unparalleled in my experience. So yeah, that's my perspective on things, and I hope to speak more about that and whatever else anyone else wants to speak about, either audience or the panel members.
Thank you so much, Kush. Thank you everyone for sharing. Yeah, who wants to jump in to speak a little bit more about like the work of community care and what that means in terms of like, yeah, both that challenging the parole board side, but then like once people are out, like how do we build that infrastructure? What are we trying to do?
I can jump in on that. Yeah, so within UK Mutual Aid, we use a concept called full spectrum community care. And with full spectrum community care, we believe that building from the bottom up rather than the top down is essential. And we see that in support for like the Parole Support Network and other projects, as in we're not coming in as a savior or a service, we're a community by and for the people who it's supporting. And so once we establish support networks and structures that support those most marginalized, we're able to support everybody from that point. Full spectrum community care includes like intersectional politics as its basis, but we're trying to bring in the community care focus on how do we provide support for everybody across all areas, and how do we do that sustainably? And of course, we're working from a UK perspective, so it's possibly very different from a US perspective, as in, you know, everything's a lot closer together in the UK. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to build these structures of support between different cities and different groups and communities of people. But that's something that kind of sets UK Mutual Aid apart, is the fact that, you know, we make sure that those most marginalized are the people who are being supported. So when we're talking about like parolee support, when we're talking about detainee support, when we're talking about immigration support, we really need to be careful, like Kush was saying, to not try and replicate services. There is like this fine line, which I think Nic said, between like friendship and providing support. When we're looking at things like the charity structure or community interest companies or whatever. They're trying to provide something, a service that they're usually paid to provide. They're not actually looking at the depths of the real issues. They're not looking at trying to abolish the structures that are perpetuating the problem that they're helping at the end of that process. And with UK Mutual Aid and Parole Support Network, what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at this as a whole concept of abolition. Things become skewed once you bring the dynamics of payment and privilege and position into the support that we're doing. And I think that's something that, like, I talk about at every talk that I do, is that we're not getting paid to do this, apart from Kush, maybe, but we're not getting paid to do this. This is something that everybody can participate in. This isn't something that's exclusive or you need certain credentials or whatever to be able to get involved in this kind of support. This is literally just something that you can sit up one day and say, how can I help? How can I use the privileges that I have, the experiences that I have, the community that I have around me, to be able to bring in support? And that can look like everything, like whether it's housing somebody if you've got a spare room, whether it's just dropping £10 into somebody's bank account, whether it's collecting someone's shopping, standing outside a prison, being a signatory on a letter. There are so many different things that people can do. And once you think of it as little steps that you can take, rather than a big, scary move in one direction, we're able to build up support networks from the ground. Did that make any sense? I'm sorry, I was in a 6-hour meeting earlier today. My brain is just worded out.
That made a lot of sense. And I want to say as well that I think it's what's so different from an NGO model or a service model is also that, like, in the end, well, like, it's acknowledging that actually, because like there's this idea that those professional bodies, like, that they help, I guess, when actually the reality of most of the reality that most of us are living is actually the most marginalized people, the people who have the least, who actually have the most resources to support each other, and how, like, the most resourceful in doing that, and is often like not given this kind of like support to do that the best. So in terms of like, it's often people who have the least, like, who are good, like, in terms of financials, who are more likely to share the most, do you know what I mean? And like share a larger proportion, like go out of their way to house someone, even though they're not the ones with the spare rooms. Like, you know, like, these are the things that are often actually the case. And actually, like, in terms of serving our communities, like, it's a mum who's got like several young kids and no access to childcare, who's great at de-escalating a situation. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's skills that we have that are like based in our experiences that are it's actually about valuing that, and like, in fact, and like actually honoring, like, people in prison have skills, they come out and they also offer things to our communities, right? Like, we offer things even when we've been embroiled in that system. We know that people who are in prison right now are doing personal care for other prisoners because there's no staff that will do that work, right? Like, people have skills that are care skills, that are all of these things that they had before going to prison, that they developed during prison, like, to survive in prison, like, all of this. And it's about like, what will we all offer, like, as well, and what position are we in to like help someone get that job, like help someone like get housing, sort them out with a phone, like all these kinds of just whatever practical things like we can like sort out for each other. But I think it's actually acknowledging that often it's the people with the most privilege who are the least resourceful about helping people. They just know how to give some money, but they're not actually that good at like figuring out, let's put this together, let's do, you know. And I think what mutual aid, why mutual aid is so sick, is it actually acknowledges like what real skills and what real care is. Nic, yeah.
And I think that the full spectrum community care approach, and then also what Kelsey's like added onto that, is the opposite of prisons and the carceral, and like what the carceral state does or tries to do to people, to try and individualize people and demonize people and isolate people. And it's really actively doing the opposite of that. and the difference between services is so important, because the way that services are used to torture people in prisons can't be overstated. The bureaucracy is so harmful, and it's the false promise of these organizations that come into prisons, make promises to people, let them down again and again, then gaslight them about that it's somehow their own fault and that they should be patient. The number of times people, including some lawyers, sorry Kush, not you, but other lawyers, will say, oh, my client X just needs to be patient, they just need to wait. We can't even wait for the traffic light to change, we're not expected to wait, yet somehow people will be expected to wait for months and months and months for any basic tiny thing. And I think that's where this different approach, the mutual aid approach of understanding and treating people like humans, like it shouldn't be that deep an expectation. I guess I thought to mention from what Kelsey was saying about the way that people who are incarcerated are supporting each other, just from a few friends that I know, and I barely know anybody, like creating care packages for other people when they hear someone's about to be sent down, and making sure that person gets them, or passing word to people who are new or have just arrived. Like, it's happening already, and it's people who are and should be part of our communities who have been taken away from us and are being like slowly murdered by, or more rapidly, unfortunately, often by the state. So I'm getting angry. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Should we see what the audience is saying? What questions? Put your questions in. Any thoughts, comments? Queries for the group. You can put them in the chat, or you can put your hand up, and I think Sandy will spot that.
I'm sorry, Kelsey, I didn't want to interrupt. I said, this is great. I wanted to back us up and bring attention to a question that Nancy Russell had put in. Mm-hmm. I can read it. If anybody wants to either read their comment or raise their hand and ask it outright, we can unmute you. That's not a problem. Just let us know either in the chat box or putting your hand up, as Kelsey said early on. Nancy has a question here to everyone. For Kush, she says, I come from, I'm sorry, she's posted it for everyone to see, but it's for Kush. I come from a child rights advocacy background in youth justice in Canada. And one of the problems, in my opinion, along with probation and carceral authorities, is the risk assessments that are developed, that are so biased, racist, and colonialist, and tip the point scales towards what they call static indicators rather than dynamic indicators, such as supports. Life decisions are based on these so-called assessments that follow you wherever you travel. Is that something, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. Is that something you encounter in the system in the UK as well, for youth or for adults? So I guess.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And thanks, Sandy, and thanks, Nancy. The answer is yes, but it's such a good question. I could easily take 2 hours answering it, but I caught it in the corner of my eye, just as we were discussing the issues among us. And there's a really exceptional open letter that was published on Medium by, I think, over 2,000 academics across disciplines worldwide that talked about tools which Nancy's alluding to that purport to predict criminality, and they didn't pull their punches in discrediting tools that purport to predict criminality. I think the article itself, the open letter, was about a paper that was published in an academic journal on facial recognition or something similar, but the ire of the authors of that open letter was very much pointed towards all tools that purport to predict criminality. So with your permission, I'm going to just pop Sandy link in the chat to that exact article, which I had a little look for. And I'd certainly recommend that you have a look at that, Nancy. I cite it quite happily in some of the submissions that I put before the Parole Board over here and before the authorities over here, because it's so powerful by dint of the sort of scale and range of its authorship that it's a difficult thing to ignore. Quite often you have to commission experts to write reports. But even if before you get to that stage, with the increasing amount that's being written about the sort of idiotic risk assessments that are used across the world. In America, I think it's Compass, and over here we have something called the Oasis that probation use. These things have long been discredited, and the more sort of information we can put before those judicial bodies and other authorities about just why they've been so badly lambasted over such a long period of time, the better. And I'll just sort of add to that, actually, by saying in your country, Nancy, in Canada, I gather there has been some court attention to the use of these algorithms, and the ones that are used on the prison estate in particular were found to be particularly biased against the indigenous population. And so even with the courts having paid such apparent close attention to the racism within these tools, they still continue to be used. So the solution, to my mind, isn't to say maybe we can use the tools better, or to enter into a dialogue as to how to use the tools, because as a parole board member recently put to me, or in fact they put to an expert that we called as a witness, they said, well, if not use tools, what do we use? And that sounds like a dilemma on the face of it, ostensibly, but it's not. You know, use your common sense. The test for release in our country is when you go before the parole board, whether or not it's necessary for the protection of the public to detain an individual. The word risk doesn't actually come into it. And I wonder if that's true in other jurisdictions as well. I'd be really interested to hear from people. But, you know, when we talk about whether it's necessary, the whole concept of necessity is bound up with what kind of support is available on release. So, you know, part of the kind of strategy that the other people speaking on the panel with me tonight have alluded to actually provide meaningful support and provide meaningful input that is not tethered to any form of service or anything else. That's what safeguards against criminalization or crime or whatever you want to call it, or, you know, deterioration in well-being. And so, yes, we do have these assessment tools, Nancy, but I don't think we're as beholden to them as we might have presumed that we were in the past. I hope that goes some way to answering your question.
Well, that's great. And thank you for the resource. Hopefully everybody clicked that on the Tech to Prison pipeline. Before we leave you, Kush, there's another question someone put in the chat box. KV Akero, Stuland, and they're asking, I was wondering if you have some more thoughts on working within the justice system as a lawyer, as an abolitionist, resistance lawyering. So if you want to comment on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll probably be very inarticulate in my response. Whoever asked that question, it's a really tough one to broach. You know, I have misgivings about attempts to sort of to act as an abolitionist whilst I'm lawyering, and, you know, I'm looking at the concept of being an individual abolitionist with sort of care, because, you know, the extent to which that's sort of possible is up for debate, I guess. But certainly, you know, I am a lawyer, and, you know, it may be that in time I decide to go and do something else. But whilst I'm a lawyer, I'm just trying to make use of the tools as best as I can. And I don't think what we're doing collaboratively, you know, through me trying to bridge the gap between the parole board and support available on release, I don't think that would count as what people call non-reformist reform, but neither would it count as a reformist reform, because we're not trying to support the status quo. The idea of you know, the parole support network isn't to try and reinforce the structures already in place. Is to try and operate in spite of them, really. And so, and in spite of the risk assessment tools that Nancy talked about. So I have to admit, I do have misgivings, and I certainly don't attempt to use my kind of love of the abolition movement in my lawyering, because it's not that, you know, it's not for me to advertise my personal beliefs in the sort of context of making legal submissions. But, you know, wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I just sort of nodded my head to probation assessments and the forms of assessment they use. So I'm doing what I can, but you're right, to raise the fact that there's a friction there.
Requires a certain dance that you have to do, you know, and balance in order to do the work, but also
Yeah,
to maintain
precisely.
abolitionist principles. Well, I, for one, and not even just for one, I'm sure everybody here would agree, appreciate the sacrifices you make to do that, because the abolitionist perspective you bring to your work is so important. And I just wanted to echo some of the comments. There's a lot of encouraging just comments in the box. So Eshe, Cindy Lou, and I agree with Cindy Lou as well, is in total support of what you said about the so-called, and I appreciate, because they're not as little as they might seem to be, little things that one can do to support parolees. And also that privileged people think nothing except for giving money. I think Kelsey was one who made that point. Cindy Lou and others were getting a lot of encouraging words, and a lot of supportive comments along the lines of the great comments that you're all making. So,
and if anyone else is doing or is involved with decarceration projects or similar kinds of things, like, please, we'd love to hear about that. We know that there's other kinds of schemes in other places that are trying to free our people, right? And so any ways that we can do that. I think what we have started here, like we said, it started off with trying to get like friends out, and then trying to link people with more friends, and it's been so far mostly through Kush, and we obviously want to like expand it and build this network, where it's like, obviously UK Mutual Aid is national and has like this amazing network. And I wonder, for me, it's also about how we build our infrastructure of support, and then connect through that, like, to people from within our communities who have been disappeared by the state in whichever way, whether that's mental health institutions as well, whether that's detention, whether that's prison, and how we can like be building those infrastructures and connecting with like who's already representing those people or who's already supporting them, and like bring them into this. That would be like an amazing way to be like expanding that, right, to start from mutual aid in some ways as well. Any other thoughts? What else did we, I know also we had potentially some messages from a friend inside who wanted to share like some experiences, I guess like maybe around stuff like that bureaucracy stuff that you were sharing, and these elements. But I don't know if Nic, there was more messages that you wanted to share from our friends.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we're not able, that it's not been possible at the moment within our context to facilitate people speaking in a way that's safe for them. But yeah, there was somebody who wanted to share the story of their recall, which maybe speaks to some of the things that we've heard here. Where, yeah, so she got recalled for having a mental health crisis. She could feel herself becoming distressed, and left her approved premises, which, sorry if people already know, this is the place you're expected to reside in once you're released from prison. And she left at a time when she wasn't meant to leave, for the safety of herself and other people around her. She was keeping everyone safe. And then she got recalled and is still in prison years later, years and years and years later. And this is so not uncommon. Yeah, another friend has been denied parole because they are a self-harmer. And I know that, you know, people might try and, you know, say that, oh, mental health support within prisons is so important, blah, 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 or this reformist crap. But really it's just used in a horribly violent way to demonize people and criminalize mental health. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't really be more specific about what people wanted to say than that, maybe. But yeah, if there's any thoughts on how, centering people who are incarcerated in a thoughtful way in events like this, that would be really welcome, because that's definitely something that I've been, not very successful with currently, from my experience anyway.
Right.
Not to suggest other people haven't been.
Well, I definitely appreciate it's a delicate situation to bring their voices to the forefront from behind the walls in a way that won't harm them. But I have to say that you are, as best we can without being them, of course, representing their voices beautifully. And I appreciate the call, Nic and Kelsey, most recently, but all of you are putting out for coalition building, and our audience is responding beautifully with some of the work they're doing in the chat box. So I invite any of them if they want to speak up. Otherwise, I'll simply, call attention to some of the comments to see if there's anything you wanted to say. We have about 10 minutes left. And also, as I call your attention to a couple of their comments, if you have any other closing remarks, we definitely would love to give you that opportunity before we wrap up. Banish Ahmed's is from the Dish with One Spoon Treaty Territory, and comments that I'm doing some work with Kashmiri's prisoner, Kashmir Golpash, not-for-profit collective, and ask, how do we connect within the global abolition networks? I think this is a great question. So any suggestions that you have, any of you would be great.
I think one of the others is probably best place to answer that, but I have a quick contribution before one of them, the others answers it more fully, which is that I think tech poverty is a huge issue. So there are a couple of organisations I think emerging in the UK that are looking to fight tech poverty, and how to link globally, I think, often depends inevitably, much as we're seeing today, on the ability to connect online. And for the Parole Support Network, the borders are no boundary really for joining, because there's strength in numbers for supporting people on parole, and that can come from anywhere all over the world. But in order to bridge that link, of course, the person that we're supporting will need access to technology. And Kashmir's of anywhere in the world the most harrowing example of how tech is being used against people there at the moment. So solidarity with all of those that you support, Binish. But I think one of the others can probably answer more fully how to connect with abolition movements specifically.
Anyone else? Kelsey?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the problems has been that we have been quite disparate, and in some ways in the pandemic, the more of us have connected online and have been engaging more in these kind of international or transnational conversations. But at the same time, a couple times I've done panels with people calling in from representing or who are part of the NSARS movement in Nigeria, and every time the connection has been really bad, and we've not really been able to hear each other and things like that. And there are still limitations kind of within that, and things that have still I don't know, when we've tried to engage with these international conferences and stuff, sometimes there's been those things that felt very pointed of it's often voices from the global south that end up being the ones that they're oh, never mind, and it's oh, you're here and you still can't actually hear what you have to say, and you can't fully engage in the conversation, and that's quite frustrating. Yeah, I do think so we've been sharing our links. So if you want to personally connect with the Parole Support Network, you absolutely can do that. There's I think it is about really knowing who to, I mean, I don't really have a very good answer for this, to be honest. I do think that like we are often in little pockets and we are only starting to like bridge these connections, and it is really about like, because abolition is something that has to be, you know, like we have to be quite careful and we have to build trust, and it is very like relationships based in terms of how we can like build these movements. So it is, we are taking our time, and it is really about like, yeah, doing that really intentionally and doing that across borders really intentionally, because we are not going to be able to like dismantle the PIC in just like one place, right? That's not going to happen. And we can learn so much from each other in terms of our strategies and stuff. But that's just me saying that. I think I agree it's important and not really giving you an answer, sorry. I don't know if anyone else.
I think great, Kelsey, is in the chat, if you can see the chat, Binish has been chatting with someone else and they look to have developed sort of a dialogue among themselves and potentially a solution, which is amazing.
Love that.
Yeah. I think definitely be great to connect. Oh, sorry, Eshe, were you about to say something?
No, go on, please.
Yeah, like definitely it'll be really, really good to connect, because I don't know, I personally think that like, and just having any conversations about how difficult it is to be doing any of these work is important, not in like a, you know, a self-indulgent way, but in order to make sure that when we are doing that work, that we can like give each other strength through having those conversations, so that we are doing it in the most effective way that isn't bringing our stuff onto the people that we're trying to support. So I feel like just, you know, being in contact would be a great so please, it'll be really nice to like connect, and also to hear of any, you know, different ways that different people are using to get away all the ridiculous and like ever surprising bureaucracies of prisons to support our loved ones, and like collaborating on that across borders. So
inside outside organizing, like sharing strategies for anything around that. And also I was just thinking about the real importance of making those connections, because like otherwise we literally fall into traps where it'll be like, okay, so we won't build the prisons in the UK, we'll just build them in the former colonies instead, and we'll just deport people straight into those prisons, because that's what they've tried to do with Jamaica, with Nigeria before. And like, we have to be hyper vigilant about kind of the role that that different countries kind of play, particularly like the global north plays in like building up incarceration and punishment and all of these, all of the militarization, etc., that's happening in the global south. Because that's, this is a tangent, but I suppose it's one of those things to think about in terms of when we talk about abolition. I think people often talk about, oh, well, what about Scandinavian countries and the kind of reform movements that we've seen in some places. And I think what we've learned from that really clearly is that like, what we know is that those countries highly rely on like imperialism essentially and neocolonialist models to like create violence elsewhere in order to have a different quality of life back in Norway and Sweden. So I think we want to be hyper vigilant about like actually building solidarity across borders and learning how we organize to resist, so that it's not just like further exploitation that we're actually building instead.
Absolutely. Eshe, did you want to comment as well?
I was just kind of going to say a bit similar to what Kelsey was saying, where I think we need to be very careful about how we interact with other movements and organizations across the world. A lot of what people think solidarity looks like is maybe seeing a cause and holding a rally outside Parliament and bringing some attention to it for 5 minutes, and appealing to a system that we know is wrong, that is a colonial system that is fucked up, and trying to get a small amount of something from that system to try and create a win for someone else in a very saviorish way. With UK Mutual Aid, like we've supported people Uganda, Nigeria, Caribbean, like all across different places in Africa, because we're a Black run group. So all of the people that are on my admin team have links in different places. A lot of the people within our group will just be like, okay, this is going on here. Let's do a little bit of a fundraise for this. Let's see how we can bring actual support to people there. And also not forget that often some of those people who have the links in those places, who have the background and the history in those places, are asylum seekers in our country and need support as well through those movements. And that's the kind of support that UK Mutual Aid tries to provide. We try to be really person forward. So instead of jumping on a hashtag trend or hosting a demo or whatever, we try and see what actual support is just there that we can provide, that's being asked for by the people who need it. Kush is right though, like tech is definitely a big thing, especially in the pandemic. And so I'd urge that like privileged people, you know, with financial resources and stuff should be making sure that everybody has access to technology. And that's something that I think we assume very incorrectly and with a very colonial oppressive mindset that, you know, there's a certain type of people who can't access technology, but actually like the majority of people that I've worked with within, you know, working class communities in the UK don't have regular access to technology as well. And so we need to be looking at everybody when we're talking about access to technology too, and not just kind of creating this idea of who has access and who wouldn't have access. Yeah, I think that's what I have on that.
Excellent. And you're getting a lot of love in the chat box. You got to check it out. We're going to actually download these comments and we're more than happy to send them to you so you can have contacts that people are offering. But you're so right on with your comments. And I really, when I read your bio, I did key in on the fact that you are, as you should be, critical of the saviorism that we often see. So thank you for noting that, because I think that with perhaps all best intentions, it comes off very much in a way that is, you know, this burden of helping others and the savior, we have to help these poor folks. And it comes off in a way that is off-putting, does more harm than good sometimes. So thank you for pointing that out. And just wonderful points. So I want to make sure that, and then I want to make sure I leave the last couple minutes for any closing comments that our presenters have, that I direct the attention of everybody who is participating today to the recent comment in the chat box. Thank you, Laura, for posting, one of our organizers, a link that you can go to offer your reflections on this roundtable, as well as any feedback you want to offer to the about the conference in general. And we greatly appreciate your feedback. This is our first effort at this, and we hope to be able to repeat it. And it would definitely be, you know, helpful to have your feedback as we plan for our next go around. And this session has been recorded, and we will be archiving it along with the others at our Imagining Abolition 2021 channel. So let me see if there's any closing comments that anyone has quickly before we wrap up. We're up on time now, but I wanted to make sure I didn't cut anyone off who had something they wanted to say before we close.
I'll go if no one else is going. So one of my team has just reminded me that Haiti really needs tech support and stuff right now. So if anyone is looking for places to give right now, please have a look at Haiti. I'll try and see if they can just drop a link in the chat box right now. But yeah, I also just want to remind people that, you know, mutual aid, especially the way that UK mutual aid is run, Black-run mutual aid comes from a long history of anti-colonial, abolitionist, Black liberation movements and struggle. So this isn't something that's new. This isn't something, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We are drawing on an ancestral spiritual history of Black struggle and resistance to the state. And so we have to be very, very aware of the power that comes with that, and make sure that we're respectful, participating in full spectrum community care. So putting our marginalized family forward, making sure that we're providing support and not services. And I really would love to get in touch with anybody who wants to talk about mutual aid or link nationally, globally. So yeah, thank you from UK Mutual Aid.
Thank you so much. And if anyone who's been in attendance today fails to get the contact information you were looking for, just reach out to us, the facilitators of the conference, and we have all of that. We'll be happy to share that. So I really want to thank Kelsey, Eshe, Nic, Kush for your time. I know we're up on time now. We're going to have to close. Thank you so much for the post in the chat. You've inspired us tremendously. You've challenged us to do even just small things. We can do it if we work together collectively. You've also challenged us in a great way to build coalitions and to work together with one another. So thank you so much. Now for our audience, I want to encourage you. There's a short break. Kelsey. Yes.
We do one shout out for the Parole Support Network itself, which is like, please email us if you feel like you want to get involved, if you feel like you could sign on to our letter to show like, hey, I'm a fancy professional person and I think this person needs to be free, and you'll happily as an abolitionist sign off on that regardless of who it is. You know, send us your info, any kind of way that you want to like put your name to it or like get involved or provide support or anything, like please do email us. That is why we're here today. So definitely want to like give that a shout out. Nic, was there anything that you wanted to say? Was that it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
You're all so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Nic, I didn't want to cut Nic off, or Kush, did you have any comments, either of you? Were you good?
No, I think it's good time for lawyers to take a bit of a backseat, really, and allow us to speak sense.
Well, I already feel how incredibly busy you all are. So the time that you offered us here today means so much to us, because I know you could have gotten at least 4 or 5 people off on parole into the time you've offered us today. So thank you for all of your hard work. And I want to invite the audience to join us again in approximately 15 minutes. We'll have another session. Go get your pen, your paper, your crayons. It's a writing workshop and art, and we'll be bringing all of the the arts into our organizing with the next session. So please come back and join us. Thank you once again. This has been amazing. I'm honored to have played a part. So thank you all for letting me be a part of this, and meeting you has been wonderful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all of the support, to Jen, to Laura, to all of the organizers who have been helping today. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. This has been great. I'm so in awe of everything you're doing.
Oh, bless you. And you too.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.